Welcome, tubers. This is Galactic Storyteller. We are going to be talking with the alien hunter today. I'm really excited about this show. You know, I'm always talking about the need to decode this reality so we can understand the construct of this matrix and what's really going on in our world. And many of you send me emails because you're way past the point of deconstructing Mormonism and religion, and you want to go further on out there. Well, you can't get any further than aliens. And many of you have talked to me about genetic engineering, implants, abductions, and there's no better person to cover this topic with than Derrel Sims. I'm going to read you a little bit of his bio, but then I'm going to ask him to augment because his CV is longer than my arm, and we're lucky that he's making time for us today. So Derrel is actually the leading expert on alien abductions. His 50-plus years of research has focused on physical evidence and led to his groundbreaking discoveries of alien implants, which we're going to talk about in just a couple of moments. And alien fluorescence. I have no idea what that means, so we'll get the 411 on that. As a former military police officer and CIA operative, Mr. Sims has a unique insight to the alien organization, which he believes functions similarly to an intelligence agency. Derrel is also a compassionate and skilled therapist and certified master hypnotherapist who has helped hundreds of alien experiencers all over the world come to terms with what they've witnessed. And I'm going to ask you to augment your CV. What else do we need to know? Because that says a mouthful right there.
It kind of does. I guess for your audience, the important thing that I need to bring up is that I bring a heavy investigative background to the phenomena. I'm a former military police officer, volunteered during the Vietnam War. I left college for that purpose. And then while I was in the military police, in the military for 3 years, I was sheep dipped. That means taken out of the Army and placed in the Central Intelligence Agency in covert operations for 2 years. After I got out of the service, I became a private investigator and have been for over 40 years.
And you do your investigations all throughout the world. That's not just the United States, correct?
That is true. We've done 25 surgeries on alleged abductees who wanted their implant or other object removed. And the last one I did was in India, to be sure.
How did that turn out? Because I did see that you had gone over there for that surgery. So have you done any follow-up on in terms of the forensics for the implant?
The lady involved, the story of it, let me give you the short version of it. Flew into New Delhi and met with a lady. We were supposed to have the surgery 2 days later. We didn't. Somebody made a mistake, scheduled the surgery for that morning. I got in at 2:30 in the morning. We had the surgery at 10 the next morning. So,
oh, wow.
Oh my, it was a mess. I went down, got it all straightened out, and got the surgeon together, told the surgeon what I needed, and the hospital agreed to the program. We paid for all of that. And then I told the surgeon, I said, I don't mean to be intrusive, or I said, some doctors would take offense to me saying this, but I'm going to have to conduct the surgery. You do the surgery and I'll tell you what we're looking for because you're not going to know. And I do. And he said, totally agreed. He said, I'm quite excited. And he had to remove the object, and it was only an 8-minute surgery. I mean, it was very simple. Afterward, he looked at the other x-rays of the lady and was stunned. He still had not been told this was an alien abduction. He didn't know anything about that. I don't tell these doctors anything unless I have to. And he said, those other two objects in her side and in her leg are far more interesting than the one we pulled out of the shoulder. And I said, that's true. I said, the one in the shoulder, the alien expected me to remove. He knows that. It's probably a ruse. The other two are fascinating.
Wow. So they will often do that. And I'm going to go back to your childhood in just a moment, but let's finish this story right here. So what you're saying is oftentimes they will implant more than one implant. One they know you're going to remove, and the other one is hidden.
Yes, if they suspect that the person is going to get in touch with me, it's going to be removed or anything like that, It was in a real obvious position. They told her initially, the reptile and the grays that were involved told her that it will not hurt. It did. And you'll never know it. You can see it for a mile. And it's right there on the top of her clavicle, shoulder area. You could see it. It was so easy to see.
Wow.
Obviously, they had lied about everything. And the most important thing that I found fascinating is that if they were going to do anything or be involved in some way or another, they would have known about the surgery, which is going to happen 2 days later. The problem is it happened that morning at 10 o'clock. And my computer quit working after the surgery that afternoon. And I got it's brand new. It's a brand new Mac. I mean, like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
The lady in another hotel room, the next morning, we spoke, and she says, "You're not going to believe this." I said, "I'll bet I do. Tell me what happened." I didn't tell her a thing about it, any of my stuff. She says, "My sister called from Mumbai, which is half the country away, and said the aliens, and they disguised themselves as generally different things. In the United States, they might hide themselves in the image of an elk or a deer or a wolf or whatever, even sometimes a dead relative. In this case, they disguise themselves as the little monkey people, which is one of the gods of India is the Hanuman, which is a monkey god. And the reason they do that is because he's very friendly, very kind, all kinds of stuff. So the sister said they were beating on the lift, which is the elevator, screaming, and because they were so upset that you got the implant removed 2 days early. They didn't get to control it. So it was hilarious. And that apparently was the reason for my computer mess up, which it took me, my tech here in the United States had to do stuff with me for hours, and then we finally got it straightened out. But that went on for weeks, off and on for that problem.
So have you been able to get that implant tested to see what the chemical or the elemental makeup is of it?
We have, and I actually have it. I have film of it while I'm at the laboratory in Los Angeles, and I'm removing the biological housing, which generally is a non-inflammatory response. Which for your audience, that simply means, and this is really important for the audience, usually the implants are housed in a biological container. What that means to most people, and especially to a doctor or a pathologist, the one who's going to remove that, he's going to say, well, that's an inflammatory response, either chronic or acute, around the object. In other words, if you have a splinter, it swells and so on. That's the chronic response the body has to protect it, to isolate the object. And that's what every one of these pathologists think. It's an inflammatory response. What we found in these remarkable circumstances is that it in fact is not a biological response. It is in fact the skin of this person, like in a scoop mark. They apparently will take the scoop, like on my leg, and house it inside the object inside the scoop mark, and it makes a biological containment. And they're stunned because the material is not an inflammatory response. It is in fact keratinous material, which is your surface skin, your hair, your fingernails. They don't grow inside the body. And when the pathologist found that, he said, "Where did you find this?" He thought it had to be on the outside of the body. He said, "No, it was deep inside next to the bone." He said, "That's impossible. There is no such thing as a keratinous material deep inside the body. It never happened. It can't happen." We have film and 17 witnesses, including an attorney and 2 doctors, and me doing hypnotic anesthesia, that it did.
So then they'll take the surface or something that's outer, encapsulate the implant it so it keeps the body from creating an infection and pushing it out and rejecting.
Right.
Correct? In a nutshell?
So the body won't even know it's there. You won't know unless it's close to the surface where you can actually see it.
It's kind of genius.
Very strange. Very strange.
Wow. But any of the metals that have been under forensics, have you been able to ascertain, are they part of our atomic chart, our elemental chart, or are we dealing with elements off-world?
We're dealing with several things. One is it is the answer. The first part of your question, which is quite brilliant, yes, and I'll explain that. And the second part of the answer is they also use other things that are here. And if you don't know what you're looking for, you'll miss it totally. In this lady's case, they use part of bone is what we found. But the problem is, what's bone doing under the skin, in the shoulder, and there's never been an operation or break of bone, nothing.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. So that's fascinating to us. But again, the first one, in my opinion, is a ruse. They did that on purpose. It's the other two we'll go back to India and look for. But the answer to the first part of your question, which is really good, is in the first two surgeries I did in 1995, we removed 4 objects from 2 people, both of them in Texas, one in Houston and one in Columbus, Texas. And the objects were tested by Los Alamos and New Mexico Tech out in New Mexico. And those 2 laboratories, independent, did not know what they were looking at, where it came from, didn't know a thing except that it was metallic. And they constructed a special microscope to look at the object, and it housed a little containment, a little chamber, so that they could fire a laser into the implanted object, and it would capture the gas and tell us what it was we were looking at and what the elements were surrounding it. Wow. The elements that were surrounding it were bizarre. They, first of all, determined that the metal was from a rare meteorite called the Widmanstatten or the Yaochung meteorite. These are rare meteorites, and they're not like a big meteorite. They're like little tiny needle-like projections, 1/4 inch long, extremely rare. And of course, they had no idea it was inside the human body, wrapped in a keratinaceous tissue, which would be impossible. Yeah. And the fact that a meteorite's inside somebody is also impossible. But what they did find in the first testing in Los Alamos is 11 different elements surrounding the metals. And that made no sense, because those elements didn't make any sense being on a meteorite. It just made no sense. After they finished their testing, they sent the object off to New Mexico Tech for a qualitative analysis. What they found is that the material, of course, was this meteorite from outer space, and very rare. And they tested it for testing for hardness, and they found that first of all, the object was in a T-shaped formation in the lady, perfect T, like a capital T. And in that formation, the T here was of the hardest known steel to man. The leg here, underneath it, was a soft carbon, which again makes no sense at all for a meteorite from outer space. It doesn't. None of this makes sense. Unfortunately, one of our doctors that I later fired as a result of that and other reasons, called down to the laboratory and said, because this is supposed to be a blinded study, nobody's supposed to know anything. And he said, "What did you find in our implants?" And they said, "What are you talking about?"
Oh, no.
Well, the implant that Mr. Sims had sent up here. Who's Mr. Sims? He blew the whole cover. And, it was just horrible. And they said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "The alien implants that we sent down there." Oh, my God, they ran for cover. Fortunately, I had the original findings from them, because as soon as they heard the word alien implants, they made a second report, which they altered things. I have both reports, so I know the truth of exactly what happened.
Oh, wow. Had you worked with this laboratory before? No,
this was a blinded study. No one knew anything. NIDS, the National Institute for Discovery Science, paid for the scientific study. We went there and did a presentation. And the long and short of that is simply that 18 scientists sit there, including Jacques Vallée and many other good scientists were there. And they unanimously agreed that of all the UFO people that presented that day, we would be the only ones accepted. and they wanted our object studied, and then they allowed me to pick out the particular implants I wanted to test. And that was the first 2 surgeries we did.
Wow, that's fantastic. So on your website, you've got an example there. It's maybe a 2-minute clip, excuse me, where I believe you're at a conference and you're holding up a magnet, and the implant, you can see it moving underneath the skin. Do you remember that?
I do. And
Okay. What happened with that? Were you able to remove it?
And no, we weren't. And the reason why, this will, again, it's one of the things in ufology that upset me to no end. The guy came in, my DSP satellite specialist was a friend of mine, was managing my table while I was finishing up a conference. As I walked in, he said, "You need to talk to this man right now." And as I did, I began to speak to him. He was a little scared because a MUFON investigator was there with his camera and filming it. And he told the guy he would have to sign all kinds of stuff. And, we got to know your name, everything. And I said, no. We don't need to know anything. No. You're scaring the man half to death. Don't do that. This is my case. Stay out of it. Just film it. That's all. We'll work that out later. So the guy, he finally came back, sat down at the table. I did 2 examinations. One of them you see there. I brought over Stanton Friedman's standing there watching the whole thing. He was just shocked because he'd never seen this before. Dr. Bruce Maccabee was at the next table. I brought him over. He's sitting there witnessing as well, because I wanted everybody with credibility witnessing this whole event. And then I did the cursory examination on the young man. And I said, well, whatever it is, it's metallic, it's ferrous, and this powerful magnet I have is pulling it up out of your skin, literally. You can see it quite well.
Yes.
And I said, well, I have to ask the LB questions. What do you do for a living? He said, well, I'm a carpenter. I said, any possibility that a nail got shot from a nail gun inside your hand and a little tiny piece of it's there? And he said, I've never been injured. And I said, well, actually, I believe that story because there's no scar or entry wound anywhere near. But it did have a story of alien contact and so on. So he was very scared, and this is really a bad idea to start throwing legal papers and documents to people like that, because they start freaking out. Long story short is this guy started up again with, you got to sign all these papers or I can't release this. And the guy and his wife finally left, and they didn't come back. And later, I contacted the guy privately in another state. We've been talking since then. Hopefully, he will come forward and allow us to remove the object or to examine it further. But that's why I don't like people who have never been involved in this phenomena butting in, telling everybody what needs to be done when they don't have the slightest clue what needs to be done.
Right. You've been doing this for over 50 years, and you originally got started because you were an abductee when you were at least 4. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. What can you tell us about that? Because that's pretty traumatizing.
Well, it was in Midland, Texas when it all first occurred. I was 4 years old. It was wintertime. I was cold in my little bed. And now that I know a lot more of the event, I can say what happened rather than tell the story and have to backtrack. Since I know the rest of the story, the entity has already finished with me. He's brought me back, put me in bed. He's walking out toward the wall, and that's when I realized something's wrong in the room. I woke up. And woke up's not an accurate term. I wasn't asleep. I switched myself back on, and he turned me off. They do that. And at that point, I'm thinking, why is he walking toward the wall? He's going to bump into the wall. Why? Where is his clothes? It's cold. It's freezing. And it's wintertime. And the little tiny house we had there in Midland, Texas didn't have any insulation. I mean, it's cold. So the entity apparently heard me thinking that and turned around as if I were speaking it. And I heard him say something which was bizarre to me, because his little thin tiny mouth didn't move, and I heard him say, "It's awake."
It.
And he's talking obviously about me. He realized he's made a mistake.
And this was telepathic.
Yes, I shouldn't remember anything. I shouldn't know anything. And at that point, he's standing there. And while he's standing there, little kids see things differently than adults do. They just do. I
Sure.
noticed he's got these large black eyes that are perfectly round, not the Hollywood version that you see on TV and that sort of thing. This is a different model. It's a gray alien style, very skinny, spindly, bulbous head with large, perfectly round eyes. Almost no nose, no ears, a little thin, tiny mouth that never moves. And I noticed that he doesn't have any clothes on, and it's cold. How can he be doing that? And of course, little kids notice things adults don't. I noticed not only doesn't have any clothes, doesn't have a teeth.
Oh, we're
Doesn't have genitalia.
Okay, hold on, Derrel. We just had a little bit of a glitch here technology-wise. So you were saying that you noticed, as a 4-year-old would, that he doesn't have a TT.
He doesn't have any genitalia. And
Okay.
I didn't know what genitalia was, so it was a TT. That's that simple. He
Right.
didn't have one. He didn't have, I have a sister. She's got something. I've got something. He doesn't have anything. It doesn't make any sense to me. He doesn't have a belly button. I can't figure this out. Well, after years of investigating, if you don't have a navel, you weren't born.
Right.
You got here some other way. You were hatched, cloned, manufactured, or made. You got here some other way than we did.
Right.
And two is, if you don't have genitalia, you don't procreate. So what's he doing in my room? And at that point, he realizes he's made a mistake. He's going to have to fix the problem. So the way they do that, if they decide to do it, is his eyes begin to move a little bit, just a tiny, there's a little bit of light in my room from the well house outside my window. It lit up the room a little bit so you can see him pretty well. And his eyes moved slightly. And I don't know what that meant then. I suspect it has a meaning based on what I know now. But at that point, I became paralyzed with the most ungodly fear. I have never in my life experienced anything like that. Now, since then, I've learned a lot about the alien, probably forgotten more than most people ever know. He transferred his fear from the world in which he lives to me. The reason I'd never experienced that fear before is because it wasn't mine.
Wow.
It had nothing to do with any fear we know. And they live in a world of enormous fear. It's a very controlled world. We tried to apply our goofy ideas to them as if they fit them, and they don't. And they like that because it makes you know less about them, because you're applying your logic, and logic is not truth. Logic is a system of thinking.
Right.
It's just that simple. So anyway, he moved toward me, and when he did, I got really scared, and I pushed real hard with my little tiny bed, which is a cot, and I fell. It pushed it away from the wall, and I fell out with my wrapped quilt and everything around me. I fell on the floor. My little legs were up on the bed, up in the wedged in the corner of the bed, and my head hit the floor. And the worst nightmare of a kid happened at that time. He lifted up the covers underneath the bed and moved his large bulbous head right up next to my face, about that far from my eyes, and with his eyes began to program me. He didn't shapeshift into another being. That's a bunch of bull. He
Okay, good. We're going to talk about that.
He changed my consciousness of him into that of a clown, so that I would think that I had a bad, terrible dream of a clown. This was just a bad dream you won't remember. Well, I did remember. I kept shaking my little head. No, 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 no. Because even at 4 years old, I realized this guy's trying to program me. There's something wrong with this picture. I wanted to remember him for the clown he was, not for the clown he wanted me to think he was.
Wow, that's amazing consciousness at 4.
Anyway, that's the bottom line. And the next thing I know, I'm up in my bed. It's morning time. I wake up, I'm everything, and he's gone. But I remembered every little detail. I was so traumatized by the event, I never did tell my parents. And they realized something serious had happened. And I never would tell them, because I knew I was going to get this stupid answer, which I finally got from my mother about 3 or 4 years ago. She said, I saw you on Ancient Aliens and everything, and Well, I knew you were an investigator, but they said you were an abductee. Well, that's just not right. I said, actually it is. Well, why did you never tell us? I said, because that goofy looking, Boo Radley look on your face,
Oh.
I did not want to answer that face and that expression and that knowledge way back then at age 4. I didn't want to face it.
Children know when they're going to be believed and when they're not.
Sure they do.
And they're so often told, you're just seeing things, there's nothing in the closet, nothing's under the bed. I did that with my kids and I should have known better, but you know.
Just a bad dream. That's all they would have ever told me. And that's exactly what he programmed me to believe.
Now, did they visit you a second night in a row?
The second night, this is real unusual. Normally they don't come back very soon. It's very rare. The next that my parents realized I'd been traumatized. They didn't know what the problem was, but they never did this. And they put me between them to go to sleep. And my mom said, I don't remember that. And I said, you don't remember because you were programmed that night too. You're programmed not to wake up. I said, you sleep like this. And I put my hand over her face. She said, how do you know that? And I said, because I was there. And I said, Daddy sleeps on his right side with his arm over like this. And she said, how did you know all this? I said, because I was in the bed with both of you. I remember. And I said something wrong. I opened my eyes again, the same feeling. And there's 2 of them standing at the end of the bed, 2 aliens. One is the one that took me the night before. The other one looks just like him. And I don't know how I can explain this to you, but I could tell the difference between the 2 of them if there were a million of them standing there. I don't care if they look the same. You know the signature of the one that got you. He's the one that's going to be your handler, and he's going to come pick you up and take you back and so on. So long story short, they took me, and the next morning I had a scoop mark on the inside of my shin. Now, my legs are only about that big around when you're 4. They're little, tiny, skinny, look like a bird leg. And I had a scoop mark 5/8 of an inch big. It looked like a crater on the moon to me. And I'm sitting there playing with it, pushing my finger inside the scoop, wondering, well, where in the world's the scab? You know, because if I hurt myself, there had to be a scab. Kids play with scabs. They do that.
Right.
And there's no scab, and I can't figure that out. And as I'm pushing my finger harder and harder into the scoop, I hear this voice inside my head, and I never speak to myself. I never speak in second person. And it says, you fell and hurt yourself. Well, that's interesting because I didn't. And I knew that wasn't me. I never speak, and I never hear voices in my head. And this was not my voice. So it was obviously a part of a program to make me not pay attention to the scoop mark. Since then, we've done studies on the scoop marks of people and found that real scoop marks are like a dermatological punch. We know what the device looks like.
Right.
That does this. It takes a scoop and they keep the skin in case they ever need for an implantation, as an example. And by that, they take that. We found that the inside of the scoop has been cauterized by a very intense, bright ultraviolet light. So it's called solar elastosis.
Solar elastosis. Okay, so that cauterizes the skin, the nerves, the vessels, so it's not bleeding. And then once they do the implant, how are they able to heal up the tissue so that you shouldn't see any sort of outward signs?
No, 2 things are true, and it's important to tell your audience 2 things. Number 1, implants are extremely rare. Okay. I'll get 20 emails from people all claiming to have implants. They think because they're an abductee, they have an implant. That's just not true. It's just not true. And I've got one person that wrote me the other day and said they had nearly 1,000 of them. That's not, I can tell you right now, it's not true. And, oh, it is. I've got scars and I got everything. And you really need to talk to me. No, I really don't. You need a psychiatrist. Anyway, their implants are rare. They really are. It doesn't mean people don't have objects in them that are weird. They could be. And sometimes aliens lie. Sometimes I think they will allow you to focus on things that are not implants, make you think it's an implant. But again, these are detectable. There are ways to do that. Number 2 is that the solar elastosis and the scoop marks, that we found, these are good markers so that people can realize that, hey, wait a minute, this is kind of weird, because if it was a dream, what am I doing with a scoop mark in the middle of my shin, or on my leg, or on the back of my thigh, calf, or whatever? That doesn't make any sense. If I'm having sleep paralysis and it's just a bad dream, why do I have missing tissue on me? Why do I have fluorescence on my hand from touching the alien? Because it's like this fluorescence is like a sweat. You can't see it in visible light. You have to actually have a little black light like the one I have here. This is a very simple. I have a $500 one that an engineer made for me that will find blood on the Shroud of Turin.
Wow.
But all you need is a tiny black light like this, which I sell at the conferences so people can check themselves. Very easily, you can put it on a keychain and carry it with you. But when you find fluorescence on yourself, if it's not oil, urine, or something like that, you'll know because you can't wash it off.
I was just going to ask you, so once they touch you and that fluorescence is on you, then it stays for a period of time? It
penetrates your skin subdermally on contact. It will stay there for at least 12 hours.
Wow. Okay.
You can't get it off. And I brought an illustration if you want me to show you.
Yeah, please.
I constructed some alien hands for, I'll put these up here. So let me make this a little larger so you can see it.
No, what is that we're looking at?
Well, I can't tell you. I mean, I could, but I know I have to kill myself. I'm just teasing. This is an alien hand, like a Gray's hand. The normal Gray's hand you'll see will look like this.
Okay. Yeah.
Other Grays are different models, and I mean to say that to your audience so that they understand what I'm saying. You can see the green fluorescence on it. It won't show up green until you hit that with that black light. Otherwise, it's going to be gray, grayish color, or whatever he is. But when you hit it with that black light and he's touched you, you're going to see fingerprints or something on you of that fluorescence. And it's very bright. You can't miss it. It's not like makeup or oil or lipstick or something like that. It is very bright. It'll scare you. Abductees will often run to the bathroom, especially women, and start scrubbing.
Oh, wow.
So they remind me of a rape victim. And when you start scrubbing, it just gets brighter. It's not going to go away. It's not going to happen.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. So let me ask you this. How do you tell the difference for those who did not have their consciousness intact? How do you tell the difference between a real legitimate memory, a recall, versus maybe a screen memory or an implant, something that's been put within the person as a smoke and mirrors type of scenario?
Okay, absolutely great question. And this answer gets me in trouble with the people. Let me frame this way. There are two types of people that have these events. When you have an event, you become one of two things. In most cases, you become a contactee or an abductee. A contactee to me is these I call the honeybees. These are wonderful people that they buy into the entire narrative of the alien. The alien says you're special, unique, we've chosen you, behold, and so on, and all these wonderful little things. And they buy into the whole narrative, and it's the alien Stockholm syndrome. You actually fall in love with your captor. You like them. You think that everything's good. There's nothing wrong. Where I come from, abduction is still a crime, and it kind of doesn't matter to adults, but when they come get your kids, it kind of changes your attitude a little bit.
Sure.
One girl was sleeping with a baseball bat, and I told her mother, "Doesn't that concern you? That whatever's coming to get her at night, she's sleeping with a baseball bat to protect herself." Anyway, I don't pick on abductees or contactees. I'm an investigator. Whatever view you take is your business. I don't care. The contactee generally will buy into the screen memory. I was in the school of higher consciousness, and they are teaching me, and they led me to do this, and so on. And they might have, but generally speaking, you're on the slab just like the rest of us. That's the truth of it. We've even got a picture of a lady, she's nude, a 17-year-old kid painted the picture of her because he was in her event when she and her brother were being abducted. He was taken as well. and he painted a picture of her with a 7-foot praying mantis over the top of her. And she said, now see there, I had a wonderful event, just like I told you, right?
Oh my God.
And her husband's sitting there horrified listening to the story. She doesn't have a clue, and I didn't tell her because I don't want her. If she wants to think that she was in a school of higher consciousness and all kinds of wonderful things happen, I'm okay with that. I don't want her remembering a 7-foot praying mantis being standing there 3 inches away from her face programming her. I don't want her to know that. If she likes that narrative, then that's fine. So I call them the honeybees because they're like bees in a hive. They don't realize the funny little man in the white suit with the large black eyes isn't supposed to be stealing your honey. He doesn't have any right. You're bees. Get it? He's something else and you're bees. Now, the difference between abductees and honeybees is that I'd call the abductees killer bees. If you can come, they make honey too. But if you come try to steal my honey, you try to come take my child, you're going to find out that if I can do it in any way, shape, or form, you're going to get stung, and you're going to get stung a whole bunch. You're going to pay. And if you want to do anything with me, all you had to do is ask. We could have had a discussion. You want to come in the middle of the night and abduct me and then come get my son, you're going to pay a price.
Now we have a problem. Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the New Age world, because many of them are under the impression that there are so many Palladians and Arcturians here to save humanity. And I'm guessing you're familiar with Stephen Greer.
I am. I know most of these people personally.
Okay, he made a comment one time on an interview, it's been a few years, that this was a sweeping statement, all aliens are here for benevolent reasons, which in my mind, automatically I was like, okay, that's bullshit. And 2, are you being controlled? So those were my 2 immediate thoughts. And so what I'd like to ask you is, from your experience and what you know, what's your opinion on that?
Well, first of all, I know most of these people when they were nobody.
Uh-huh.
When they were first starting, trying to get their reputation built up, which he's done a pretty fair job. Some people, especially scientists and some others, have a real problem with his credibility. But the thing he has done that I think that is good and recommendable is he's helped with this disclosure project, and that's good. But the problem is that and I gave him cases while I was debating him and with Richard Boylan and others at Norway in a conference there. And I said, well, I've got 2 dead children sitting with a mother grieving in Dallas, Texas, which would disagree with you. Well, that was, she's wrong. She didn't know what she talked about. I think she does. She was involved in the event. She was taken when they were taken, and the kids came back. Instead of putting them in the little play pool they were in at the front door, the little small amount of water, that a 4 and 5-year-old child were put in the neighbor's swimming pool, which was gated and fenced with 2 fences, so they couldn't have climbed over and got into it. And they're both dead, floating in the water. I said the autopsy report was far more interesting because it showed that they had been physically attacked or hurt, injured. Bodies don't bruise after death. They bruise and get cut and skint before death. There is a difference between them, and you can tell that. Any investigator knows that. Right. And that's noted in their pathology, in the forensic report on their death. So of course they were upset about that. And I said, I can give you a case of a woman being skinned alive, an elderly woman in her bed in another country, and a man, his eyes were surgically removed. I said, you guys don't have a clue. You don't report this stuff because it doesn't sell. It won't sell your books. It won't sell. It doesn't sell on TV. The X-Files used me for an interview for the movie X-Files, the movie. They interviewed Whitley Strieber, Roger Lear, and they said both those guys didn't know what they were talking about or were lying. And they used me, and they gave me my interview, which I'm going to put out here real soon. Good. It's an X-Files interview, and it's the best interview I've ever done. They said, if there was a Mulder, it would be you. And I said, why are you stroking me? What's the point? And they said, because you're ex-CIA, you're an ex-investigator with military police, you're a private investigator, blah, 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 all these different things. You're a hypnotic anesthesia therapist, you're a master hypnotherapist, you're all these different things. You got 2 instructorships in scuba diving, you're a 4th degree black belt in the martial arts. You're the real deal. I said, but that still doesn't mean I'm not He said, no, you qualified every time you didn't know something or you weren't sure about it. You qualified it with, we don't know, we surmise, I speculate, that's above my pay grade. He said, no, these guys didn't do that. They gave us thus saith, like it came out of the burning bush, and it didn't. He said, because the case we presented to them and to you was fraud, faked. The alien was a fake alien alive. And he said, you're the only one that caught it right off the bat. You not only said it was fraud, but you gave us the guy that did it. That's what I know him. He does stuff like that.
So then your take on Stephen Greer, going back to the beginning, do you feel like he was just naive? Or
the first time I saw him, I was speaking at the International Forum for New Science. Mary Flory, my assistant, she was a research assistant scientist at the University of Washington, were presenting a paper on implants, the first paper presented in the scientific forum. And she said, let's go to the dinner that night. They're having a dinner for the speakers. And at the dinner, she had a guy named Stephen Greer speaking. I said, oh, okay, who's that? She says, well, he's the guy that started the little group called CSETI. This when it was in the beginning. And I said, okay. So we listen, and he walks around the room, and he's with this ominous look on his face. And he said, and anybody that doesn't believe every word I'm saying, he looks straight at me and says, you are a member of the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, and you're paid by the CIA. And I looked over and I said, well, I wish somebody would send me a check. I sure get accused of this stuff, and I never get a check from anybody. When's somebody going to give me the money? And then he made a statement that told me exactly what he was all about. He said, they said governments from all over the world are lining up, coming down our street. They're just lined up in these limos, and they're talking to me, wanting me to explain to them how. This is a fact. This was on film at the International Forum of New Science. I mean, I liked Feller when he said this one, because I've guarded Vice President Agnew, Karamessinis, and Helms, the Deputy Director and Deputy Director of Central Intelligence Agency, and foreign specialists that come into this country. You come in by notice of the President, the State Department. They have proved this. We have to prove your security. Everything it's a big deal. You don't land an airplane unannounced, walk in and drive over to Stephen Greer's house. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. You don't understand the mechanics of that alone. And when he said that, I said, well, the man's making this stuff up. And then he started crying. He says, the people of the world are just trying to get me to help them. And I said, oh, my God. Why am I here in this meeting with this crazy man? And since then, he's cleaned his act up. It's a lot cleaner, a lot smoother, a lot better. And but the fact is, he claims he's out showing everybody how to, for an extreme amount of money, will show you, too, how to become friends with the aliens. And you, for this several $1,000s, can join us in our little event. And the problem is that when he first started this, his best friend, Sherry Adimak, died of metastatic cancer soon thereafter. And I suspect that he and or other people may have been infected as well in his crew. And I heard that from a doctor who he apparently told that information. I don't know if it's true or not. All I know is the woman is dead and after direct contact from the alien. So you tell me how important that was for her.
Wow. Not a very benevolent act, I might add.
The alien doesn't care as long as they fool the people that they're messing with, either abductees or contactees. It doesn't make any sense. Listen, as a former police officer, if I find a body laying in the floor with a knife stuck in it, and there's 8 people standing there, and I asked all 8 of them what happened, and I get 8 different stories, guess what? You're all going downtown.
Right.
Until I find out what the truth is. Now, to take that illustration, that metaphor, let's apply it to the alien. The aliens, he went to every country, 8 different countries, and they've got a different whopper on who they are and where they came from. We're Palladians, we're Arcturians, we're Venetians, we're this, we're that. You can't be all of them. We have found 7 of the same alien entities, including Bigfoot, on board a craft at the same time, in the same room, and they're all part of the same story. What does that mean? It means somebody's telling me a whopper. Well, I'm part Irish. You go to Ireland, In Scottish, there's the wee folk. Now, it's not the little story you read in the kiddie books. It's the other story. The story that if you don't do right by the wee folk, the fairy people, they may not bring you back. When I went to Istanbul, Turkey twice, a guy was on an airplane with. He said, well, we don't have those things over here. It's a fascinating story, but only in America. I said, no, sir. It's also, what do you think I'm going to Turkey? We don't have that. And I said, what about the jinn of Islam? Oh, we don't talk about that. They may not bring you back if I don't like you. And I said, okay, it's the same story in 8 different countries. Doesn't make any difference. Again, all of you are going downtown because at least 7 of you are lying.
Right. So how many different alien species have you been able to identify? You've mentioned the reptilians, the mantis, the greys, the Nordics.
2 versions of the greys. One, there are actually several models of each, but the little gray is the one that's scared of his life because he's the least on the totem pole. There's another one that's a doctor type. He's about a foot taller than the little guys. He's the one that is going to implant you or do this other stuff. And he gets real upset with the little guy, and the little guys are scared to death of him. Then there's a mantis being, which is, now the little gray has an IQ of about 85. Not much higher than
the little worker bees.
They can't put your clothes on right. This is one of the reasons people know that they were abducted. I woke up with my pajamas inside out. Or my underwear was folded on the end of the bed. People don't normally do that. And so on. Or I woke up on top of my covers laying upside down on the wrong end of the bed, and the bed was made up. It doesn't make any sense. So the mantis being is a lot smarter. First of all, the doctor type, the gray that look is bigger than the other one, he's got an IQ of about 135, 140. He's a lot smarter than the others. The mantis being is extremely intelligent. He's got an IQ of very high. The reptile being are very sexual. They're very dangerous. They're very upsetting. They pretty much run the show when they're there. Everybody's afraid of them because they're in charge. The Nordic guy, which is a tall humanoid type guy that will be usually 6'6" or taller. Some of them get a lot taller. Wow. They are they're interesting characters. They're very, very high intelligence, but they do whatever that reptile tells them to do, they're going to do it. It's that simple. But we've seen all of them on board the same craft with 8 witnesses at the same time, so all 7 of them. These are not different races of aliens. Your audience needs to fasten their seatbelt.
Okay, good.
In your proverbial UFO, fasten your seatbelt because what you're looking at are models.
Okay.
Remember I told you that the little guy I saw didn't have a TT. These beings are hatched, cloned, manufactured, or made for the purpose of interaction with mankind to convince you they're from other worlds. If you simply look at them, forget the science, just look at the entities. Every one of the DNA of these beings comes from planet Earth. Where do you suppose you get reptile DNA? Probably not from Pluto. Where do you think you get human DNA from a Nordic? Probably not from Venus. It's a little hot there this time of the year. You'd melt. Where would you get DNA from a praying mantis? Probably planet Earth. I've seen quite a few mantises around here. So you can go right online. One of my Zuni medicine men said, well, the gray alien, they're from, I said, listen to me carefully. I said, I'm not knocking you or we're friends. You call them the ant people. Why? Because they live inside the earth. I said, came from earth is the key word here. In the earth, on planet Earth, not out there at Saturn or wherever. I said, some of them are out there, don't get me wrong, but they're there. That's where the base of operations is. The rest of them are underwater and some of them underground.
And we have plenty of archaeological evidence with the underground cities and tunnels to support this.
Bingo. You may be right on with this. But for your audience, for those that are not really sure of this, think I'm making all this stuff up, there is a NASA scientist who's written a wonderful book called The Ringmakers of Saturn. And all you have to do is go to his book and look at the photos and then look at NASA photos, and you will see gigantic UFOs, so huge you can't even imagine. Well, what planet do they live on? They don't live on a planet. If you've got a craft that's 600 miles across and 50 miles thick, what planet do you need? This one can move around and do anything you need. We had 8 witnesses on that craft alone.
So are they going interdimensionally? Do you feel like some of them are underneath the ground? Some of them are out of the solar system? Are they wormholing through different dimensions? All of the above?
We would be guessing because we don't know. We're guessing. But I talked to, I did a conference in LA years ago. And in that conference, a guy about 6'6" came out and said, I need to talk to you. I thought, what have I done now? And the guy says, I'm a DSP satellite specialist. These are 18 geosynchronous satellites that are all pointed with their lenses to the Earth, not in space, but here. Okay. And I said, that's when we are watching for real still. He said, that's not even classified. I said, so, okay. He said, I want to know why you look for evidence in the visible range. He said, that kind of makes sense because cuts, scars, bruises, and things, that's proof that something happened to you. It wasn't sleep paralysis. But you look for evidence in the ultraviolet and the invisible range also of infrared. Why do you do that? He said, I think it's brilliant, but no one's ever done it. Why are you doing that? I said, because the alien sees an infrared, ultraviolet, visible light, and X-ray at the same time. I said, you have to listen to abductees when they're telling you the truth. And I said, I teach how to determine people are lying or telling the truth just by watching them. Right. This is something I teach. And when I'm talking to that abductee, I never tell them what I'm doing. I'm also a handwriting analyst. I'm looking at their handwriting. Their propensity to lie, exaggerate, it's going to show up in your handwriting.
Right. I actually do graphology and NLP, so I understand what you're saying.
Good. Very good.
You can see that.
So the reason we do this is you're looking at for all kinds of things. I'm looking not so much to see if they're lying, that's going to be pretty obvious, but I'm looking to see if the aliens actually programmed them with parallel memories or screened memories. But I'm not like you at all. I've been in the school of higher consciousness. I understand where you've been. We'll talk about that later. But I can't sleep well at night, have all these problems, and I fit a lot of the profile on your 35 different things of alien abduction. I fit 33 of them, but I'm not an abductee. I'm a contactee. I've been contacted by them, and I am special. Yes, you certainly are. And we all are, and all that sort of thing.
Right.
But the fact is that the thing that it's important for people to know, in my view, is that you are very unique and that somebody has come a long, long way to see you. You didn't travel anywhere to see them. Mm-hmm. So if you're nothing better than pond scum, like these evolutionist scientists say, you're just barely pond scum crawled out of the ocean. You're just lucky to made it as far as you got. If that's true, why is somebody wasting all their time and energy coming from other dimensions of the planets or wherever they're coming from to look at pond scum?
Now, what do you think about the hybridization or the interbreeding programs that people say that they've been a part of in terms of stealing their eggs, stealing their sperm, meeting children 14 years down the line and thinking that this is their child? What's your experience?
That actually happens. We have evidence of that, strong evidence. I did a presentation for some MUFON investigators, a private showing for MUFON investigators up in Wisconsin, and they were really excited because it was at the home of a top investigator from MUFON, and I was doing the presentation on implants, and I said the worst implant, in my opinion, is this one, and I showed a human a fetus of an alien inside a woman. Oh, man. And they were like, because they had just made an announcement that these stories of alien women claiming the artificial insemination, all that's not true because they don't know their body, they don't know this, and there's no evidence. And I said, that's simply not true. How can you believe their stories in one area and then not another? I said, it doesn't make sense. I said, I have got 5 nurses that were in a enclosed, sealed containment working to care of a comatose lesbian woman, and made sure they're all women out of respect for the lesbian woman. All of them got pregnant that night when the cameras went off. Every nurse and the lesbian woman. All of them. I said, don't tell me my business again. As a lot of you people are investigators, are not abductees, not contactees, you don't have the slightest clue. All you know is what you read in a book or read or heard from somebody, and you assume it's true, and you're only believing some of it because some of the stuff just simply can't be true. It's beyond your understanding because you haven't been there. I have. So don't tell me what they do or don't do because you don't have a clue.
So what happened with these fetuses? Did they go full term? Were they birthed, removed?
And we have one case in in the case of the nurses, one of them came to term. In fact, I met the little girl. That's happened 14 years ago. I found out about it this last year, and I said, "Can I meet your daughter?" And she said, "Certainly." The little girl met me, and she's kind of cocky, and she's looking at me. She's very smart, and she said, "Oh, you're that UFO guy." And I said, "That'd be correct." "Well, I don't believe in all that stuff." And I said, "I don't care." She said, "What do you mean?" "I'm an investigator. It doesn't matter to me what you believe or don't believe. It said, "Do you believe in Great Wall of China?" She says, "Yes." And I said, "Well, I don't. I'm going to take the opposite position here. I don't think it exists." "Well, I've seen pictures of it." I said, "I got pictures of UFOs."
What was her response?
"A lot of people have been to the Wall of China." I said, "I've been in a UFO too." "Oh, well, I still don't believe in UFOs." I said, "I don't believe in the Wall of China." It doesn't make it not there. It just means I don't buy into it. So whatever, I said, my point to you is simply that whatever it is, it's still there. And it doesn't matter what you think about it or don't think about it. It'll still be doing what it's doing.
Right.
And she said, and I handed her my business card, and she said, "Oh, you do handwriting?" I said, I do for a fact. "Can you do mine?" I said, "I can't do it if you haven't written anything." "And why am I write my?" I said, "No, I don't want to just see your signature. The signature is simply something that you want the world to either see or you want to hide from the world. I want to know everything. You write some more." So she did, and I opened her up like a can of worms. She says, "Oh my gosh, I like him, Mom. He's really neat." You know, now because I'm telling you.
Now you have some credibility.
Yeah, there you go.
Some street cred.
Yeah. Well, one of the things you asked that I didn't answer, and I should, is about did they come from other dimensions? Did they come here? And about the children. First, there's good evidence that they in fact come from. Okay, when I met that DSP satellite guy, the question I asked him, I said, "You ever seen a flying saucer with those crap?" And he said, with those DSP satellites, he said, "There's no such thing as a flying saucer." I said, excuse me, I said, I have to translate everything back to your terminology. "Have you ever seen a fast or a slow walker?" He sold thousands of them. But there aren't any flying saucers. You have to retranslate because he can't use the word flying saucer. That'll get him fired.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Fast and slow walker.
Okay.
Things that move very fast or very slow that are not accounted for. You have to get in their headspace or it won't work.
Word magic.
Sure, lots of them. I said, second question. I said, "What other lenses do you use on that specialized DSP satellites, 18 geosynchronous satellites?" He said, "One lens is visible light, which can see your watch and he said, "That's not classified. Can read your watch from 2,300 miles up."
Wow.
Second one is infrared.
Mm-hmm.
I said, "So you can spot mad cow disease among cattle from outer space?" He said, "That's correct." I said, "Isn't that interesting? They never told anybody."
Wow.
Until people got sick. He said he wouldn't say anything. Third is, I said, "What's the third one?" He said, we see in the infrared and ultraviolet. And I said, "Okay." I said, "When a not flying saucer, a fast walker or slow walker is still and it just winks out, do you think it went to another dimension?" He didn't say anything. I said, "Or could it have simply passed from the visible light spectrum into the infrared or ultraviolet?" He smiled and said, "They just moved to another light spectrum."
That makes sense.
And I said, that would make it invisible. No one would be able to see it. That's because I said, I have a reliable witness who's a B-grade movie producer. It's got a film of a UFO that's invisible. It was there and then it wasn't. Then a bird flies back and hits the invisible UFO and falls.
Oh my gosh. And you caught that on film?
That's what he says.
Wow, I'd like to see that.
I'm sorry, only people who have got 8 fingers on each hand can. I was kidding.
Can see that. So let me ask you this. I want to go back to the reptilian thing, because there have been all kinds of rumors and stories for many years about underground tunnels in Salt Lake City with reptiles down below. Do you have any experience with that?
I hear all kinds of stories, and for years, back in the 90s, I and a friend of mine who was a commercial airline pilot for a major airline, he would pay out of his own pocket. People all make these outrageous claims. You know, there's an old ranch house out in the desert, and there's an underground base underneath it. He would fly out there, land his airplane, and go out. And so I went on him on some of these, and we never found any underground bases anywhere. One day he was flying in California at a famous base out there, and the pavement on part of it right next to the building opened up, and a device came up out of the ground. He got that on film, and he got in trouble because he flew real close and they got a picture of it. That was the first hint that there really are underground bases. Now, we knew there were, but most of the people making the claims are not credible. They'll do stuff like, well, there's no hotel that was defunct out in the middle of Arkansas, and there's an underground base under it. That is a bunch of bull, and you made the whole story up. But now the question, when I was on the TV show, one of the stars on Uncovering Aliens, they asked the question of a guy, do you know where an underground base is in Sedona? And the guy, yeah, we know exactly where it's at. And I put the screws to him. They finally told me, Derrel, you know where these people are lying and telling the truth? Straight, get this fixed. And I looked at him and I said, do you know where that underground base is at? Yes. And I said, all right, drive me to it right now. Well, we went to this little mountain. Where's it at? Point to exactly where it's at. He's lying. And I can't remember right now. Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can, because you were never here. There is no underground base here, and you knew it. You wasted about $100,000 for our money and time telling us where an underground base was. Well, somebody later after the show, after we finished the TV shows, asked a big question. He said, do you know where an underground base is out there? And I said, of course I do. Well,
and that's how you
why did you not tell them? I said, because they didn't ask me. And second is because why should I waste my time and expertise on their show when I've already given them good, credible information on other things they didn't do anything with? Sure. I'm not going to tell the world because you're only going to get one shot at that underground base. That's once you confront that circumstance, you'll never be there again. They'll never they'll have a mile out in front of it. They'll have all kinds of things, and then they'll change it. I said, so you don't want to do that. But I did give them a serious hint. We were up on the mountain that night, and the producer looked at me and said, he said, well, it's unfortunate we didn't find an underground base. He said, Derrel, you used to work in the CIA. What if we're sitting there looking, you just barely see kind of the lights, a little bit of lights in the distance, Sedona, and a little tiny city over to our right. You can just barely see it. And it's a very small city. He said, if you had an underground base out here, where would you put it? I said, you see the bunch of lights down there in front of us at the base of this mountain? He said, yeah, that's a concrete company. I said, listen carefully to me. I said, we would develop things that were called proprietaries. Proprietary is a company that already exists, and then we move in and we basically say, how'd you like to have all the government contracts for concrete for the next 25 years? Well, yes, sir. Okay, we're going to send certain people through here. They're your employees. That's all you know. You don't ask any questions. You don't do anything. You just take the contracts, do your work, and they're basically spies in another. This would not be in the U.S. It would be in another country. He said, what are you saying? I said, look at that place down there. I said, that's a concrete company. He said, yeah. I said, that's the biggest concrete company I've ever seen in my entire life. I said, what would you be doing with a concrete company that size out in the middle of nowhere? I said, Sedona's at least 15 miles that way, 5 miles to this other little city. I said, things lit up like a small city. It's got all kinds of concrete trucks. We've been out here for 2 days. 2 days. I've not seen a concrete truck or an employee do anything.
I'm going to have to ask you a little more about that because we're heading to Sedona in a week and a half. So I might take me a little road trip out there.
Well, you might have to do that. I said, I'm not saying that is an underground base or a front. I'm saying I can't imagine anybody putting a concrete company out here in the middle of nowhere.
And have it be that large.
And at night, it's lit up like a small city. It's huge.
Wow.
And we haven't seen anybody move or do anything other than walk inside the buildings. Why are the concrete trucks not moving any concrete? Why is nothing happening? Why is it lit up like a city in the middle of the night out here? What's the point?
Things to watch for. So we had a little bit of a technical glitch when you were talking about Salt Lake. So you were saying that there's no evidence to support that there are underground tunnels over there. Is that?
There may be, for people who write me at go to alienhunter.org and simply click on Alien Hunter, it'll email me and I answer all my emails. If you don't get an answer back from me, email again because I didn't get it. If I get your email, you will get an answer back. What I send people is pictures of gigantic boring equipment used for doing underground work. One of them's got United States Air Force written on the side of it. And my point is that underground bases could be anywhere. They could be tunnels to them anywhere. I don't know. And people sit around and tell you, well, I've been in all these underground, but no, you haven't. I have a top secret clearance and I haven't been there. Why do you have no clearance and you've been everywhere? So, I mean, I just have little confidence in people like that. It doesn't mean that there isn't an underground tunnel or underground base there. There are things like that. You've got the equipment for a reason. They do this. Where exactly underground base? I have a good example, and I'll close with this one for underground bases. I went to Dulce to speak to Native American Indians at the Hickory Apache Indian Reservation. And they brought me there for a reason. I did the town hall meeting, and we had all the traditionals, had everybody turn off their recording equipment. The traditionals finally came forward and started speaking, told some great stuff. But the most important thing of that meeting was what happened after. While other people were speaking, I had traditionals come over to me privately to my table in the area privately and start asking questions. One guy came over and says, what do you think of the Dulce underground base up here? And I said, you mean up on the mesa? And he said, yeah. I said, there isn't one. What? Why, everybody knows the underground base up there. And I said, no, I don't think so. He said, what do you mean? I said, look, I was born at night and I was born in Texas, but it wasn't last night. I suspect you don't have an underground base on the mesa up there. He said, but there's these diggings and tunnels and a pipe stack up there. I said, that's good. That's for show. It keeps you busy, doesn't it? And he laughed and he says, and he had been testing me all along. He said, there is no underground base up there. That's what it's
so you are saying there's no underground base or tunnel at Dulce?
No, I didn't say that. I said at the mesa.
At the mesa. Okay. Okay.
And he said, there is no underground base up there. I said, I suspect there isn't. I don't know because I didn't dig through 9,000 feet of rock to find out. So I don't technically know. My suspicion is that based on my intelligence background, that's not where I would put it. And he says, you're right. And then he drew a map and says, here's where it's located. He said, I never told anybody. He said, when you come back here, Mr. Sims, he said, I'll take you there. He said, but it's not on the mesa. I said, I wouldn't waste my time walking up there.
So you didn't go?
It's somewhere. It's somewhere else. So when I go back, he and I are going to take a little trip out there and I'll film it.
Excellent. Let me know. I'd love to see it.
He was testing me all along. Waiting for me to say, hell yeah, it's up there on the mesa. I've been there 9 times myself, crawled down into it and met some aliens and we shook hands and did all kinds of stuff. Got some greetings. They gave me some special gifts and so on. No, that didn't happen. It certainly didn't. And I said, I suspect there's an underground base here, but it's not there. He said, you're exactly right. It's not up there.
You know, one of the things I've tried to really help my viewers understand is that there is the difference between lies, truth, disinformation, and misinformation. And those last two can be really tricky. You have to have extreme discernment to understand that one just might be misinformation. The person is ill-informed. Maybe they're naive. There's no malice really behind it. The disinformation has been put out on purpose. And this is where I think we really need to be careful in the truth movement, because there's so much disinformation out there meant to lead this person down this road or this one, and it gets them off track completely from discovering the real truth.
You're wiser than your years. And that I know, because I'm older than dirt. First time they made dirt, I told them that's the wrong color. We're going to change it to the color of dirt we got now. I'm just older than dirt. The fact is that Roswell's a good example. One day we found a flying saucer. The next day they said they didn't. So they made a story up that says we found a weather balloon. Then a few years later, they changed it to another story. Then they changed it to another story. Said, oh, we dropped some crash dummies out there. Before anybody knew anything about the crash dummies, I already had one. I've got a picture of one in my hand holding it. Thing weighs 200 pounds or 6 foot tall. They're designed to be the size of a pilot's, and they were dropped in 1953, not 1947. So
Oh, wow.
you're 5 years off schedule. They keep throwing these disinformation stories out there on purpose, because if you tell enough whoppers, people will pick out at least one or two of them that they like.
Right, right. I want to talk a little bit about David Icke. I'm guessing you're familiar with his work?
Yes.
Okay. So I have some questions regarding his take on reptilians and how, as the frequencies change and shift, they're able to conceal themselves in their reptile nature, or they can take on a human presentation. What is your position on that?
Well, when I know something, I tell people, and I don't know something, I tell them if I'm speculating or revelating. And,
okay, good.
And this one I'm going to speculate on, but the speculation with some investigative ability. I had a friend of mine send me some pictures of George Bush, Bill Clinton, and other people with reptile eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, that's interesting. How in the world did you get those when no one else did? Oh, well, you just got to watch them real carefully. I said, listen to me carefully. I was born at night, and I was born in Texas, but it wasn't last night. Well, I said, just because you don't like these people doesn't mean you get to go out and Photoshop their eyes and put some reptile eyes on there. And he finally admitted to me he had done it. I said, I know you did it. I know you did. I said, don't look at me like I'm stupid and think that anytime that you got a picture of something with reptile eyes on it, that it automatically is reptile. I said, you lied and did that. But I think they're part of an evil program. I said, they may be. You're missing the point. You don't go out and make up evidence and then tell everybody. I said, well, I think it's demonic. I said, you're missing my point. Just because something's demonic, you don't go make somebody the devil, so to speak, and do that. I said, that's just wrong. And I said, you just lost all credibility with me.
So that's a perfect example of disinformation. Information put out there deliberately to
Yeah, but I did it for a good reason. Because I believe they're wrong. I said, you're missing the whole point. I said, we don't need you to help us. I said, I already know enough about the reptile phenomena that I don't need you to lie for me to help me understand. I said, no, I don't think they're shape-shifting into reptiles and things like that. I said, I find no evidence of it. Doesn't mean it isn't true. It means I haven't seen it myself. So I said, so for me to keep my credibility, I have to tell people the truth. And the fact is, I've not seen, again, I have seen the alien so-called shapeshift. For instance, one abductee in his event, he said, I was in an event, he said, there was my dad reading the paper like he always does. There was my dog laying there like he always does next to dad. And there's my mom washing dishes like she always does. I kept realizing there's something wrong with this dream, with this image. I said, what happened? I kept shaking my head. I finally got my consciousness back. There's an alien standing there where my dad was reading the paper. It's not my dad. There's a alien standing there where my dog's at, and there's an alien standing there where my mother's at. None of it was true, not even the room. It's kind of like the holodeck. And he said, exactly. And I said, what gave it away? Derrel, my dog's been dead for 3 months. It couldn't be my dog.
Oh, no.
I said, they haven't picked you up in 3 months. They didn't upload the information that your dog was dead, so that have made a lampstand or something else. They didn't shapeshift. They simply affected his visual intake. They do that. One lady in California, dear friend of mine, I said, anything happened to you recently? And she said, yeah. She said, I heard knock at my door. I said, sweetie, I said, I've been to your home in California. You live upstairs in the far back of the house. How did you hear somebody knocking on the door and no one else did? Well, I never thought of that. I said, people usually don't in abduction scenarios. You get up, you go down there in your nightgown, and you open the door, and there's your dead dad. He's kind of a greenish color, and you can't figure out about the color of that fluorescence. And you can't figure out what the problem is. And said, what happened? She said, well, I went, and my dad wanted to know if we want to go out running. I said, sometimes I do run at night. I said, so you went out running in your nightgown in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning with your dead dad? She said, that does sound pretty weird, doesn't it? I said, sweetie, it wasn't your dead dad.
Oh, man.
So did he shapeshift into her dad? No, he changed her consciousness. One of the things that she trusts and loves and admires is her daddy. The only problem is he's just the wrong color, and that didn't tell her anything. Or that she woke up at the wrong time at 3 o'clock in the morning on a door that she should have never been able to hear, and no one else in the house can wake up. She can't get anybody else up. Something wrong with the picture.
So instead of them changing their frequency so that outwardly when we're looking at them, they're projecting a human or reptilian type of shape, they're projecting onto us what they want us to see.
And it sells books. Okay. It'll sell it. Boy, it's a great story. Well, I saw a reptile the other day, and he shapeshifted in front of me and became Bill Clinton or Hillary Clinton. That's who it really was, you know. And so I think, therefore, they are a reptile. No, they're just probably doing something pretty evil, and they got no business doing it. But that doesn't make them a reptile. A reptile is still a reptile, and they're still human. They may just be doing bad stuff, and they may be influenced by this thing. I'm not saying that didn't happen. I don't know, because I wasn't there.
Okay.
There's plenty of evidence for the other view.
But that's a very different perspective, and I guess that makes sense, because if they're telepathically communicating with us and we're in a projected reality anyways, how hard is it to affect our consciousness and the physical eye? That's not difficult.
One of the best illustrations of this happened right on TV on our show, Uncovering Aliens. And one of my, I'm the abductee for the TV show. We have another guy who's a contactee, flamingly so. He believes that we're all here for the dance. The alien dance, we have to dance with them because we're missing the point. And he goes in and tells this guy before we even interview him, we're here to see the dance, and I know that you're a contactee because I can spot them for a mile, and you have never had negative experiences, and you are like me. And I said, hey, don't go influence these people before we even get to talk to them. Gave him a copy of his book. I said, oh my gosh, now you made a mess for me to straighten out, which he intended, in my view. Anyway, they all went to lunch, to dinner, and I worked with the guy in hypnosis for a few 10, 15 minutes until they got back. And then we're going to do a shoot. He's going to get in physical bed, and because he had an event that happened in his bed, so they want it as real as possible. He's laying in the bed, and I go ahead and do the hypnosis with him in the bed. And it's a very tight, because it's a small bedroom. Unfortunately, these poor guys are holding these 40-pound cameras and lenses and everything and lights and everything. And it's just awful because I'm in there 20, 30 minutes with this guy. Anyway, the guy draws pictures of the entity and everything. And then right in the middle of his totally positive event, the alien came through the wall in the scenario, and it used the face of his wife, whom he loves very dearly.
Sure.
He said, there's something, wait a minute. Now I've got him out of the screen memory into the real event. And he said, he's mimicking my wife. The lips are wrong. that's not my wife's lips. They make mistakes. I told you that. And he freaks out. So we finally go in the other room, and the witness comes in. He sits down next to me. He said, but I thought all my events were positive and everything. And he said, and he draw a picture of this one. And one of our actors there that's with me is an investigator. He's an aerospace engineer, Mike Barra, good guy. The guy draws a picture of several things. One of them is a praying mantis. One's a quick, none of that was supposed to show up. And a picture of this one horrific looking alien that looks very similar to the alien that my abductee drew in India.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't a monkey creature. It looked like this guy. And this guy, Mike Barra said, he said, the reason that bothers me is because I got a doctor friend. He said, I saw that drawing. He drew it of his abduction. He said, it's the most evil being he ever could imagine. I said, what would he liken it to? He said, the Antichrist. And I said, well, that's interesting. And anyway, the contactee at that point, who's one of the actors who tried to program this guy and say it was all positive, he stands up when he sees the reptile, the praying mantis being. He says, I'm very uncomfortable with that drawing. I don't like that. I don't like any of this. I'm going to leave. He walked off the set, which he's not supposed to do. What's funny about that is the young guy told me, and of course the question came up from one of the investigators, well, suppose he's just making all this up. I said, I had him do drawings before I did the hypnosis and after, while he's in hypnosis. So I've got both drawings, and they're both identical.
Wow.
The man's had negative experiences. There's no question of that. And he's had with several different entities. And he's still, in my opinion, I looked at the guy, I said, you're still programmed. And I said, when we leave here, you will still believe that they came here, saved the ozone, save the world, fix the ozone hole, make the planet green and all kinds of stuff. And he did. The next day I saw him before we left, and he was back to the same old mentality, just like none of it had happened. Yet he stood there and was horrified and almost in tears, describing his horrific events and the fact that they used his wife as a quote unquote, they didn't shapeshift. They simply used his image, her image. And he caught him because I brought him out of the screen memory. I know when they're doing that.
Right.
And I talked to John Mack about that. He said, why is it you always get abductees and I always get contactees? And I said, that's not completely true, John. I said, I get both. I said, I just know the difference. And I said, the reason you get so many contactees is because you hypnotize the screensaver memory that they have. And it starts an endless progression I call screen dreams. You should have read it in my book.
Right.
Said,
you got to pull back the script and see what's behind.
I said, you can hypnotize that person 100 times in a row and you will get 100 different stories. I said, the point is, John, they didn't get abducted 100 times in a row. Every time you hypnotize them, you're getting a program that's making them believe another story happened.
Wow.
I said, I'm just shocked that you did not spot that. I said, but it's called a screen dream. And they go from a screen memory to a screen dream. And you can hit the time 1,000 times, like you can get 1,000 different stories.
Right. Now you've been so generous with your time today, and I thank you for that. I have just one more question or area for us to cover, if you're okay with that time-wise.
Sure.
Okay. What is the difference between your hypnotic therapy and how you do the regression as opposed to, let's say, Dolores Cannon, who takes them into a somnambulistic state?
Well, okay. I'm going to get in trouble here. My interest is, and I know Dolores, and I like her. She's a nice lady before she passed away and everything. I do not agree with what she's doing. And the somnambulistic state, if you're in hypnosis, you're in a somnambulistic state. There are three primary levels of hypnosis. And for those of you that really want to know the whole story of this, email me, say, send me the stuff on hypnosis. When you read it, you will be very, very careful who hypnotizes you from that point forward. Because I'm going to tell you. Anyway, let me give you this true story. I'm out in California speaking to a lot of abductees and contactees, and there's a hypnotist there, a girl, a young lady, a really nice lady, is a hypnotist, and she says, I said, may I use you for a demonstration? She said, certainly. I said, have a seat right there. I'm going to do some stage hypnosis with you. And she sits right there, and there are therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, all kinds of people sitting out there. So I'm going to open some eyes today about hypnosis. First of all, hypnosis can be dangerous. Hypnotherapy has never been dangerous. When I said, first of all, when you people, I said, let's take Tarzan and Jane. Tarzan meets Jane. He's so excited he can't hardly stand it. She's like the only woman I've ever known and ever loved. And that's right. Probably the first woman you ever met. And they're at the very pinnacle of, I said, hypnosis is focused attention. Don't let anybody tell you it's something different. It isn't.
Okay.
It is focused attention, period. I don't care how focused or how lightly focused you are. It doesn't matter. I said, so Tarzan and Jane are in the most intimate part of their relationship. They're making love, and all of a sudden, Tarzan says, "Oh, Margaret."
Uh-oh.
And Jane says, "Who's Margaret?" We have a problem. We have a major problem. Thought you said you didn't know any of the girls. Who's Margaret? Now, you have just created what is called a negative anchor inside Jane, and it's called Margaret. And you argue and go on and finally get it all cleaned up, and she says, okay, I forgive you. The question is, did she really? 20 years later, you're arguing and fighting, you know, the kind of stuff where the cops have to drive up and break you guys apart, and Tarzan's arguing with Jane, and she looks at him and says, you never were the man I wanted anyway.
Ouch.
Why would she say that? Because Margaret's still stuck in her brain.
Still pissed about Margaret.
Never collapsed. That's hypnosis. When you're making love, you're in hypnosis. It's focused attention. It's focused on a particular thing. And when somebody says something inappropriate or does something inappropriate, that causes a negative anchor. So hypnosis can be dangerous. It destroyed Tarzan and Jane, so to speak, because they never took care of the problem. Now, I told everybody that. I said, now I'm going to hypnotize this lady. I did. And I've got her in the bus, and the driver of the bus is there, and the window is down, she can't close it, and it's freezing, and wind's blowing in, and she's shivering, and everybody's laughing, and then she gets the window up, and it gets so hot, and she's sweating and everything. So after I pulled her out of the hypnosis, I said, that's what hypnosis, stage hypnosis is like. And everybody's, yeah, we've seen that. And the lady says, well, it was really weird because the bus driver's hair was real short and prickly. And I said, sweetie, I never described a bus driver. You're hallucinating. You're hallucinating. You're going along with a screen memory. A screen memory is an event that didn't happen. That's what the alien does. It's a perfect false memory syndrome. It never happened. Something happened, but they're trying to place over that a screen with another memory. They don't want you to remember the real thing. I said, so thank you. And all that. She went and sat down. She's kind of confused. And but the guy had prickly hair, you know. She's still stuck there. So I grabbed a lady from the back of the audience. I said, this lady I know very well. And she's the lady that was part of the father knocked on the door thing. She came up and sat down and said, we're not going to do hypnosis. I'm just going to talk to you for a minute. She said, okay. And she said, I'm nervous. And I said, don't look at the audience, look at me. I said, you had an experience younger in your life you told me about. Yes. And it was with a wonderful man. She said, yes, a Nordic type man. And I just love him. I said, well, God bless America. I'm glad to hear that. You like him real well? I just think he's wonderful. Best thing since sliced bread and all that. And I said, okay, good. I said, well, we're not going to do any hypnosis or anything. I want to say one thing to you, and you may not understand it, but it doesn't matter. I just want you to do it. She says, okay. I said, I'm going to touch you right there on the finger, if you don't mind, with your permission. She says, yes. I just want you to go out. He said, everything was positive. It's got every word of it. Edge, I love him. He's it. I said, I want you to go back to the very first time that you ever met him. She starts screaming to the height of her voice, screaming, bloody murder. Then she's real confused because she can't figure out why. Because that's the first time you met him. And it wasn't like what? You've been programmed since then, time after time. That's why they come after children, because they're easier to make the big teddy bear. I saw this big teddy bear walking around, and we've been best friends for all these years and everything. They use the teddy bear, mama, Grandpa, it doesn't matter what image they use. I guarantee you, there's no teddy bear 6 foot tall walking around with reptile eyes. There is no teddy bear like that. That's a screen memory. That's imagery given to your brain.
So do you feel like the way Dolores was doing the hypnosis, it was stuck at the screen memory where there are suggestions there?
Or open them up for a screen dream. Even John Mack didn't know this stuff. And he's a professor of psychiatry at Harvard, Pulitzer Prize winner, written numerous books, brilliant mind. I admire him to no end. We had good conversations. But I could tell you stories on a personal level about some of these people and their staff and things because I worked with them. And it's not the same story, the same narrative you get from them. Mm-hmm. So like I told John Mack, I said, he said, well, I've always wanted to meet you. I said, I don't really believe that. I said, because Dr. Timmerman up here at Tulane University, who chairs the philosophy department there, is your best friend, told you 10 years ago, you need to get down to Houston to meet Derrel Sims, his senior investigator, Dale Musser. They're light years ahead of you, John. You need to find out what they're doing. And you never showed up. So I know you got the message because I got the carbon copy of it.
So we didn't want to know too badly if it took 10 years.
I guess not. But he sure did after we talked.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you for clearing that up. Let me ask you, what are you doing right now? What events do you have going on? Where can people find you?
Well, the reason my eyes are red right now is because I hosted the Houston UFO Network meeting last night, and I gave them a presentation on one of the things I did at Roswell this year. I've been speaking there every year for 22 years. And what I did this year privately, I didn't tell anybody, was to go out to the Roswell hangar and I had certain information that no one else knew. And I went out to verify it. And so I showed them a presentation of that, showed them some things about an underground tunnel that we actually did find in Roswell at some place near there. And I'll probably put a video out about it and all that, but it's real. It's very, very real. And found out all kinds of interesting things. And anyway, we had a lot of fun last night. Then we went out to eat and all that, and we stayed out till 1 or 2 in the morning. And then I have to drive for an hour to get back to my home. So,
and you had time, and I wasn't.
And I don't drink, but I am thirsty. And
get yourself some coffee.
Yeah. So, but anyway, the long story short, my website is alienhunter.org. And if you want to email me and find out any of this information, I'll be glad to send to you. It's free of charge. We do have a couple of things that people might be interested in. I did write the book Alien Hunter.
Fabulous.
The book about how I found evidence. And if you follow it, you'll find the same evidence I did. So
that reads more like an investigative how-to.
That's right.
Okay.
And this one's on implants, and the people said, yeah, you got to write a book on implants now. So that's the first book on implants. The last thing I tell people, you don't want to get the book, simply get the video, because it's a professionally done video of Alien Hunter. And one good example on the video, I said, a group of people out in LA sent me, a UFO group sent me this guy because they thought he was nuts. I said, they figured, well, you can do some therapy and fix this guy. I said, first of all, the guy wasn't nuts. I said, the guy had committed himself to a mental institution, all kinds of stuff, because he was a reasonable person and thought this stuff can't be happening to me. How can this be happening? So I must be mentally ill. So he committed himself. They released him, said, nothing wrong with you. So he finally contacted me, but they sent him to me is what they did because they couldn't deal with him. They thought he was crazy. And I listened to him and I said, well, let me explain something to you. I said, if you're told by someone that you're insane and then you get treated for being insane and medicated for being insane and you're not, it'll make you nuts. I said, there's nothing wrong with you. I agree totally with your therapist. And he says, wow, then what's happening to me? I said, it's called alien abduction. You mean it's all real? Oh my gosh. I'll do anything I can to cooperate. I said, I gave him, started listening to, fluorescence, different things I wanted him to check. He sent me the most remarkable piece of evidence that is in that video.
Wow. And
What
they
is
can
the
order that
evidence?
video off your website.
That may not be up on the website yet, but you can just email me and say, "Where's the video, buddy?" I'll let you know where it's at. It's $20. I'll pay the postage on it. But anyway, he sent me a picture. He told me about an event. He said, "My best friend took my car without permission." I said, "Okay." And he said he went through a red light, and in Los Angeles, that's like $350 fine. They send you a photographic picture of whoever's driving the car, and prima facie evidence you're guilty, and they want the money, or they're going to come get you. And he said, anyway, my friend is there with his sunglasses on in the picture, and he said, "Mr. Sims, I swear to you, there's an alien in the back seat." The city of Los Angeles filmed one of the few rare cases. We got maybe 3 cases of an alien abducting someone in a car, their car, and the city of Los Angeles filmed it and sent the $350 fine to this guy. I said, "Don't you send me a copy, you send me the original." He said, "I will, sir." And he sent me the original, and I have the photograph of the alien in the back seat.
Oh, wow.
It is just, that's one of about 20 things, implants and all kinds of other evidence.
I hope they sent the alien the ticket.
Of the alien inside the woman, it's all on, every bit of it.
Wow, fantastic. Well, I have so much enjoyed this. I know the viewers are going to get a big kick out of this. They've been looking forward to this interview. I really appreciate you taking the time with us today, and I hope you'll visit with me again sometime.
I will. I find you engaging, very smart, informative. I like your thinking, and I'm impressed with you. I liked you the first time I met you, and I just thank you for the opportunity to speak to your audience.
Absolutely.
I hope I've helped them out a little anyway.
Anytime we get information that's truthful information, I think is helpful. So, and you've been fantastic. I so appreciate your time today and your expertise.
Thank you, dear. I appreciate you.
We'll see you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.